Nearly landed on camera then. Well, we're here at the beautiful Lindholme Lakes for a little bit of spotted commercial fishing. We've had a great morning catching everything that swims on maggot shallow. And now I'm doing a bit of margin work, catching everything from this to bigger carp, which I've not hooked yet. But this is why I wanted to start now, because let's go through the story of margin fishing. Where to start, when to finish, regarding how you feed your peg, your hook bait choice, your presentation. Everything is really important. But of all the aspects of margin fishing, it always comes down to timing. Once you sort out margin fishing, it will elevate your match results by 100%. The amount of matches I've won or done well in, where I've caught, I'd say up to 80% of my fishing the last hour and a half is countless. I can't count how many times it's happened. And for that reason, I've got so much confidence in knowing, and I suppose confidence is the biggest thing, sitting there thinking it doesn't matter, it's going to work, it's going to happen, because I know that if I feed my peg right, I'm going to drag in those bigger fish. And it's the margin where you catch those bigger fish. Like I said earlier, you can elevate your weight massively as long as you feed your peg right. The key to it is, like I said, is timing. And what I mean by that is going on the swim at the right time. You might have fish coming down the edge quite early, but if you go on it too early, you spook those fish, you unsettle them, and that can often cause foul hook fish, unsettle your peg, spread the bait everywhere, and before you know it, you're back to square one. What I'm a massive believer in is feed for quite a long period of time before I decide to go on it. I'm on about these kind of venues where they hold a good head of carp. So let's talk about the feeding. Now, for a start, I've got my go-to mix, which is green swim stim marine halibut. I absolutely love it. Of course, we've got that nice green colour that blends so well with the colour of commercials during the summertime, that green tinge. But in that, you've also got that marine halibut that adds that density, that weight to the mix, especially when you're margin fishing. There's no way that ground bait's going to stay there on the bottom like what we think. It's going to get spread around instantly, but it's extra weight, bigger particles within the bait, within the ground bait, that holds and retains the fish in a tighter area in your peg for a longer period of time. So I always like to mix my ground bait, and Tom will do a close-up of the ground bait that I've got over wet, inert, heavy, something with some authority. Therefore, I'm fishing in about just under 2 foot of water. That extra weight's gonna, in my head, give me that security, knowing that I've got a concentration of feed in the swim. And I'm also feeding some live maggots with it. On this venue especially, live maggots really do help kick off your peg. So what I'm doing, and I have been doing for a bit now, for the last, let's say, 40 minutes, just every 5-10 minutes, feeding the peg. And don't rush. And what I mean by that is, let the fish come over the bait. A lot of people get caught up with edge fishing, that they spend too long on it. If it's not working, come off it. Give the fish a reason to come over your bait. And I'm a massive believer that if your rig's in that water, the fish know, they sense that it's there. And at that point where you're trying to build up your margin swim, it's really important in my head that I haven't got a rig in the water, because that will help the bigger fish, the cleverer fish, the wiser fish move over that bait far quicker. It's come to that point though where I feel I can fish it, because every time I feed some bait down the edge now, I can see the fish wanting to come over the top of it. So let's give it a go. I haven't actually hooked a big carp yet. I've had a couple of bream, I've had an F1, but I've not hooked a big carp, and trust me, they're there. They're wanting to come down the edge. So I'm using a 4x14 Malman Adam, and I've dotted it right down so I can read everything that's going on in my peg. And like what I say, what you find is you get the odd little stocky as well. But I'm using a Malman Adam 4x14. It's just under 2 foot deep, that. Nice heavy rig, something with some authority to stabilise that hook bait. I've got a 5-inch hook length here. No, sorry, I apologise, a 4-inch hook length. All my bolt down right next to the loop-to-loop. I've got 019 Aero Slick Silk mainline to an 017 hook length. Something with some authority, some confidence. If I hook a big fish, even if I foul hook it, I want to give myself that chance of getting it out. Down to a 14 Kaizen with 6 maggots on. I want to be selective. I'm targeting the bigger fish in the peg. I can just see one there now. I'm targeting the bigger fish in the peg. I want my hook bait to stand out, and that's why I've got a big bunch of maggots on. Dead maggots, just in water, and it's amazing when you put maggots in water, how they swell up in size. It's so much bigger than live maggots. So a few of them on a hook, absolutely perfect. Now I know that the fish are there, I think the ground bait's done that job. That constant feeding of ground bait, another one's just swirled there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kinder pot now some micros. Micros are heavier. And as well as that, you've got the particles as well that are going to stay in the peg for a longer period of time. That's going to help the fish stay there, feed confidently. So I'm going to ship out another swirl as well. Everything's speeding up now. It's coming to that time of day where everything's working. And I've just pushed them micros softly into the pot. So when I let them out, they fall in a nice group down to the bottom. And of course, they're heavier than ground bait, so they'll stay in the peg for a longer period of time. Put my hook bait right over the top. I've actually just seen a tail right next to my keep net through the corner of my eye. So this is time of the day where all of a sudden, the fish that are coming down the margin are different fish. Because of course they associate the afternoon with feeding time. Because what do? We chuck all our bait in at the end of the match. And all of a sudden, the size of the fish that you start hooking down the edge will completely change. Another skimmer, but they all add up. They all add up. And it's really important to use a positive rig when you're margin fishing. And I suppose a lot of people associate the depth of water with the size of the rig, but edge fishing is very different. Even if it's 12 inches deep, I'd still use exactly the same rig. I want something really heavy and positive. You can imagine big carp when they're coming down the edge, they're moving everything around, stirring your bait around, but the last thing you want stirring around is your rig. I've plummeted up and I've found a lovely little area, literally about 10 inches in perimeter, so to speak, where it's nice and flat. I need that rig to stay in exactly that point because that's where I've plummeted up. So that's where my hook bait is sitting dead depth on the bottom. If I move that rig away from that area, I could be on a different depth. My presentation is hindered and I could misread bites and foul hook fish. And the last thing I want to do is foul hook a big carp. Nice big bunch of maggots on there. Let's go through that process again. Feed some micros, but it's all about progression. And if you don't feel it's working or it's not right, come off it, leave it, let it rest, let the fish settle. Because trust me, even if there's 15 minutes of the match remaining, you can amass 2 or 3 big 10-pound carp, add 30 pounds to your weight, and that can win you the match. It's all about feeling whether it's right or not to fish it. And it feels all right at the moment, but the big carp are coming in but not settling. And I reckon within the next half hour, they'll be coming in and feeding confidently. And it's amazing, as soon as you hook your first big fish, that's when everything changes. And I've just had a little stocky carp try to take me up bait, so rather than striking, I've tried to just shake it off the hook so I can put my rig back in the same spot. Now, if I don't get a carp this chuck or a bigger fish, I'm going to feed another pot of ground bait to bring them in, because I can actually see them coming into the peg just beyond my pole tip. And that ground bait is going to massively give them that confidence, increase that time it takes for them to come over where my bait is. At the end of the day, I want the fish to come to me. If you don't feed enough bait, they'll spread that bait around and end up feeding on the particles that are way beyond where your hook bait is. So you've always got to give them a reason to come to you. So let's go out with another pot. Like I said earlier, I think the most important aspect is to always remember not to have your rig in the water all the time. If you don't feel it's right, do something else. Go back shallow, go back on a method feeder, whatever else you're doing to catch fish, just let it rest. Let the fish gain confidence. But what happens is, they're out of a big carp, you see. They're coming in, they're just not settling yet. So what I'm going to do is, after this point, that's a better fish. That's a better fish. What I'm going to do after this point is I'm going to feed another pot of ground bait. I want to really speed up that process. Not a carp, might be an F1, but it's a better fish. And even something like this, that isn't a carp, really does change what fish come into the peg. Can you imagine all the bloom of clouds come up now? That they're going to be carp straight over the top of that bait now. Don't go behind the keep net, mate. Definitely an F1. Feisty one. Come on, son. Oh, it's... Hey, what did I say? It's Barry! Hello, Barry! Hey, my favourite fish of all time. Hello. Little sweetie pie, look at that. Barry the barbel. Aren't they gorgeous fish? So, that's a nice little sign. So, what I'm going to do, always remember this, especially when you're margin fishing. When you know it's the right time and they're instantly coming to that bait, which is what happens, especially later on in the day, when you put that ground bait on, I reckon they're hanging shallow, inches away from that bait, waiting for a next introduction. Be armed, be ready. So as soon as you put that bait in, you're on it straight away, making the most of that opportunity. When they're homing on that column of bait, when it's at its tightest, when it first goes into the water, that's when your ground bait, your maggots, your pellets, whatever you're feeding is at its tightest. That's when you want your hook bait in the centre of that bait. And the more fish that start coming into the peg, I'm then going to wean down on the maggots and concentrate more on ground bait or micro pellets, depending on what is working best at the time. But the maggots really do help give fish a reason to stay there. There's other particles apart from the ground bait. So straight over the top, be accurate, use a marker. I've got tape on my pole here, so my fingers are on I spent all that time finding that little area. I want to be mega accurate. So my fingers on the tape, I'm got my pole against my marker. I'm actually resting the pole on my landing net, and this is the beauty about the setup I've got here. If I wanted, I've got, one hand free to do whatever I want, but look how still my pole is. And that's really important when you're margin fishing. You don't want to spook fish. See that? That or another carp. They come into that bait instantly. It's just going to take a little bit of time, but you want to be as still as possible and as quiet as possible. And I'm a massive believer. I might look a mess on the bank, but I want everything at hand. I want everything within my reach. So the last thing I need to do is get off the box to get something at that prime time when I'm catching. I don't think it's shadowing. I'm a massive believer in vibration. And the less movement you make, the quicker it speeds up that process of the fish feeling confident down the edge. And you can see now there's so many more fish wanting to come in. So hopefully very soon we'll start getting a good arrival of fish. And they're coming, as more fish come into the swim, they're going to get more confident and they're going to compete more against each other. Therefore, they're going to grab the bait with more confidence. When there's less fish there, they've got that time to inspect the bait. But as soon as a few more of the mates come in, they've got to grab that bait. Otherwise, they miss that mouthful of food. Now, on my rig, I've got... Now, that's a good bite. This is why I'm using a big hook as well. 14 Kaizen, confident hook. Also on this rig, I've got backshot. And backshot is really, really important when you're edge fishing. As with most deck fishing, I'd say. Because you want to stabilise everything as much as possible. And you can imagine when fish are coming down the edge, they're causing a lot of swirling, a lot of movement, water movement. I want to keep that rig as still as possible. So let's cancel out the maggots this time. Just put a few micros in. And also what I'm going to do, I'm just going to wet the ground bait in the pot. And that massively adds weight to the mix. Helps it fall in a tighter clump. So pot underneath, give it a shake like that, and it's gone straight down in a wet ball just by adding a little bit of water into the pot before I've actually shipped it out. A couple of my maggots have dropped off, which I'm not happy about because I wanted to go straight over the top of that. Well, we're coming to the killing time of the day really, when I should be catching a load of carp. The interesting thing is everything coming down the peg. I've not even hooked a carp yet. What is interesting is I've changed what I'm feeding. I've fed quite a bit of ground bait, but I do want to reserve some for topping my swim up, so to speak. And I've just swapped to just feeding maggots, and it has definitely made a difference. I think getting the fish accustomed to what's on the hook, more particles for them to choose from. And now I seem to be catching better. And this is why I wanted to save my ground bait, because occasionally I'm just going to give them a peg, a boost with ground bait, but definitely just by feeding loose maggots in a kinder pot, and then occasionally a larger amount via the bigger pot. Not necessarily a full big pot, but a third of a pot, which is equivalent to 3 of these guru pots that I've got on. It's definitely made a difference with how the fish are feeding in the peg. But it all comes back down to that simple fact that I'm trying to catch the carp, but everything's coming down the edge because the fish are a little bit moody. They're, like I said earlier, they've got other things on their mind. And but definitely maggots has made a big difference. So I'm just going through the motions, just trying to catch everything that swims at the moment by feeding maggots. Well, I've had a few nice F1s doing this. That's foul hooked. Is it? No, it's not. It's in the mouth. Thought it was foul hooked then. But great day's fishing, to be honest with you. And just at that time of the day where you really do feel as if you're going to get some better fish coming into the peg. But these are real weight builders. And it's often, even on the F1 side, that the F1s down the margin are considerably bigger than the fish that you catch anywhere else. Clever fish. They know when to come down the edge to feed. So what I'm going to do now is just give them a larger pot of maggots. I'm not going to feed any ground bait yet. So just a nice palm full of bait. A third of a pot, so to speak. bigger volume of bait, and that's why I wanted to save my ground bait, because in a minute I'm just going to top up with ground bait, and that is when the carp come in. It's amazing what ground bait does for carp. But at least I'm catching fish. I'm missing a few bites, but I think they're from the little stockies that are coming into the peg as well. You know, you can imagine all those little peckers coming into the peg, which really, when it's fishing, and every day's different. On the last day of the festival last week, I was fishing down the edge. I never even caught a small fish. Every carp I had was 8 to 12 pound, and I got one every single drop in for the last hour and a half. Whereas today's a little bit different, and I experienced this on the open match on Monday, where I did catch down the edge. I ended up second in the match, but I didn't catch a run of big carp late on. I caught everything from bream, F1s, little stockies. The carp were there, but they would not settle. And sometimes you have to adapt. Rather than thinking, right, I'm just going to fish for big carp, you have to get your head down and catch everything. And a lot of that comes from what you feed. You know, I could spend all the time in the world potting in ground bait, trying to bring them carp in. But it could be the last 15 minutes where all of a sudden the carp decide to feed. And in that time, I could have missed out on a lot of fish if I'd have fed maggots, for example, as a bait. More bait that ticks the boxes for all the species that are coming into the swim. And you can always tell when the carp are there, because you'll get more float movement, and I'm not getting that float movement like what I expected to get. So this is a typical example of where this is the point where I feel I need to feed ground bait. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed a pot of ground bait. Again, not a brilliant bite. It didn't feel as it might be foul look this, but you want those real positive bites that really, there we go, it's off. So let's give them a pot of ground bait and let's see what happens now. Now they're really coming into the peg. You can see them boiling there. Just a few maggots. Pinch full of maggots. Let's really see what happens now. It's amazing how clever carp are, really. There's so many carp in this lake, but if they don't want to feed properly, and I tell you what, as soon as we pack up, they'll be tailing up down that edge. They're so clever, so clever. And all these little elements you have to consider when you're fishing down the margin to speed up that process of making the fish feel confident to feed really is important if you want to catch more fish. But it's that transition period, this time of the year where they want to spawn. Once they finish spawning, they'll come down the edge, they'll feed confidently, your bites will be clean, you'll be hooking them in the mouth. This is the time of the year where you start foul looking fish, because they're there, they're grouping up together, not necessarily for food, but for chasing each other down the margins, rubbing up against the bankside. All the, shots move. All those little things that we don't consider that could be the reason why all of a sudden it's gone a bit funny, the peg. Right, let's try now with a little bit of ground bait. See what happens. So what I'm looking for are really positive bites, and when the carp are feeding, that's exactly what you get. And I can tell how cute they are. They're now swirling about 1.5 meters down the bank, basically in front of where Tom sat with the camera. What you must be really careful is that you don't end up chasing tails. Yeah, I suppose you can sometimes venture along the bank a little bit, but then you're defeating the object of what you're trying to achieve. And before you know it, you then refeed a new spot thinking, Right, that's where they're coming into my swim. Then you go on that spot, and then they start tailing up even further down the bank away from where your pole tip is. So it always comes back to that same principle of what I've been explaining. Make the fish come to you. See, that were a carp, that. They're on that ground bait straight away. They're just not feeding properly. Just occasionally get a liner from a big carp that's in the peg feeding. It is in the peg feeding, but it's very particular on what it's feeding on and how long it's in the peg for, more to the point. Well, the peg's getting a little bit better now. I'm still waiting to hook my first carp. But what I've done is I've just moved, literally, I've contradicted myself a little bit, but I've had to make that change because what I've noticed that near the platform it plumbs up about 2 inches shallower than the depth I was fishing, but it's closer to the bank. And looking at how the fish are coming into the swim, it's almost as if they're coming up to the platform and then moving back out into the open water. And where I've been putting my rig and feeding, it's attracting fish into the zone, but they're kind of like not feeding there, if that makes sense. So I've literally moved about a foot further along the pole section, nearer the platform where there's a lot more fish movement. And like I said, when this happens, that the swirling now is further down the bank, but this just feels better. And because I'm not bagging, I'm having to make this change. See, that were a good carp, that. Weren't a proper bite. I've had to make this change to create a reaction, because it's coming to the time where they are coming down the edge, feeding, looking for bait. So hopefully this change in area is the word, where I'm feeding now, could be better. And hopefully it's going to catch them better fish. But I'm looking for clean bites off carp, and it's just not happened yet. And it's bizarre, this, with pleasure fishing, it should be one a chuck. Now the interesting thing is, in match conditions, if you can imagine, everyone's feeding bait down the edge, therefore the carp come down in larger numbers. When you're on your own feeding down the edge, everything's coming into your swim because there's only your bait there. So it really does affect sometimes what fish feed down the edge in comparison to pleasure fishing as opposed to a match condition. And what I've experienced today down the margin, yeah, I'm catching a lot of fish, but not the fish I'm after. Whereas I can almost guarantee in match conditions the carp will be moving down now and feeding confidently. So what I'm going to do in a minute, I'm going to give the peg another boost of ground bait for the killing time. This is literally, if there's match conditions, we're coming to the last half hour of the match. So it's really important to make the most of this time. So let's put some bait out, top the peg up with some ground bait. Just a few maggots now. See what happens now. Let's see what happens now. See how quick they come onto this ground bait. There's a lot of skimmers feeding down the edge at the moment. See another boil just on the other side of my float now. And again, what I'm looking for is those fast, clean bites. When the fish really feed down the edge, often is the case, sorry, where I don't actually put my bait on top of my float. I'm on a shelf, so as you're looking at my float, to the left of the float it goes deeper. That's where maybe 1 inch or 2 inches to the left of the float from the angle where you're looking at it now, that's where I'll put my bait. So the fish are coming to the bait first, which minimises liners, foul up fish. But the interesting thing today is I'm not getting many line bites, I'm not getting many false indications, yet I'm getting loads of fish movement in my swim. And it just, when it's like this, it shows how spooky they are. And like what I said earlier, it only takes one fish for you to hook, one decent carp, and it can completely change things. But in a good way, it's nice that my rig is sitting there nice and still. I'm not getting loads of indications, I'm just waiting for that clean bite, so to speak. And with all styles of fishing, you just have to keep feeding, you have to keep going. And often when it's like this, it's just advocating the fact that the venue is fishing harder than you expect it to fish. And you have to deal with that. There's no point in trying to force the peg and trying to make the species feed that aren't feeding. And this is the beauty about the setup that I've got. I'm actually targeting everything that swims with the setup that I've got. I'm using maggots on the hook. And that helps me read what fish are in the peg present and what fish are actually feeding, willing to take the hook bait. But all of a sudden, things have gone very, very quiet, which I think is a really good thing. A good sign that there could be some better fish there now. Which is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for what I'd call a clean peg. All of a sudden, those little F1s, the nuisance F1s, have stopped taking me up bait. And you call them nuisance F1s, they all add up, but it's the time of the day where you don't really want to be out of the water. Whoops. You don't really want to be out of the water swinging nuisance fishing. You just want to be sat there like what I'm doing now, waiting for a nice fast bite, hooking into one of the Bonsai's resident big carp. And let me tell you, there are some big carp in here. Unfortunately, we just picked a day where they're harder to catch, but I like that. It makes you think more about your fishing and your feeding and how you're going to entice those fish onto your hook bait. You have to think more about your feeding patterns, your timings, what bait you're going to feed. And you can see there's loads of fish movement around. And hopefully soon we'll get a reaction. I'm going to give this another 2 minutes, and if I don't get a bite, I'm going to feed again. But now there's definitely some fish there. Well, it's come to that crucial time of the match. Like I said, the last half hour, where all of a sudden things are happening for the better. Like I said earlier, this is where you can really increase your final weight with bigger fish. And it's took a while for me to hook my first fish. And in the meantime, I've caught quite a few other fish, but these are your weight builders. And actually, for the lake, this is quite a small carp, but these are your weight builders. These are the ones that we're after. One of these on a regular basis and you soon amassed a big weight. Because although they don't look big, because they're carp, they're stocky, they're heavy. That's £5, 4.5, £5. So good news. Like I said earlier, as soon as one of them comes in the peg, everything changes. Now what I want now is his granddad. So again, crucial time of the match, so I put my hook bait on first, putting 4 white maggots on, topped with a red. Why? I don't know, but that's what I'm happy with at the moment. Rig's working well. Yeah, rig's sitting in the water nice. Always double check that your rig's working all the same all the time. Put some more ground bait in. Pinch full of maggots. Same process, it's just time and motion, like what I said earlier. Some days they come in really quick, other days they take a little bit longer. Maybe it's because of Tom's aftershave that he's got on today, it's took a little bit longer. But finally, I think we've got an arrival. Everything's marked up, bang on top of my feed, and sit and wait now. And this is the beauty about it, when they do come in, they're still not coming in numbers, which I think's a good thing. It's a relaxed thing. I'm just waiting for the odd bite. I don't want to be putting my rig in and getting loads of line bites. So it shows two things. It shows that I'm fishing in the right depth of the water, because I'm just getting clean bites now. So they're coming up to the bait. They're coming into the peg, up to the bait. If I was fishing further away from the bank, which would be maybe 4, 5, 6 inches deeper than what I'm fishing now, I'd be fishing in the wrong depth of water. I'd be getting false indications and spooking the fish out of my peg. So you can imagine them coming into the zone and they're crawling up that shelf, mopping up all that bait, and finally they'll find my hook bait. Because my bait is rolling down the shelf, but my bait is static. This is why you have to be quite stationary when you're margin fishing for these clever edge fish. I do not want to be lifting that rig out. It's amazing when you think there's nothing in your peg and you just lift your rig out to create that fall of your hook bait again, and you spook a big carp that's literally there mopping away. So movement is a big thing at this time of the day. The clock's ticking, half an hour left, and it's crucial you make the most of this little window where you can really add a big percentage of your weight to your final net. Not a very clean bite, that, a bit of a funny bite, so it wouldn't surprise me if this is foul hooked. It's not a carp, it's an F1. No, it's inside at face. It's inside at face. So you can, it just advocates the fact of how moody they are today. Inside at face? Yeah, just right next to mouth. Hooks come out. Not a clean bite, that. So I'm going to repeat the process again. 4 white maggots, 1 red. Always try to use dead maggots when you're margin fishing, and there's less chance of the maggot actually doubling over the point of the hook. A little bit of ground bait, pinch of maggots. Well, do you know what? This has been a really, really interesting day, but it just goes to show how important it is, I think, to actually use the right bait. So I've concentrated mainly on maggots, and especially with how it's fished today, it's definitely been the right approach because the carp haven't fed properly, and that's allowed me to keep putting fish in the net, ticking away. Like I said, that last half hour, all of a sudden now I'm catching carp and big F1s. And it's allowed me to just stay in tune with what's in the peg feeding. And it's amazing what weight you can end up with if you just stick to your guns, keep things simple. And you end up catching some lovely fish like these carp. Real weight builders and great fun to catch as well. And as long as you keep things simple, very, very effective on boosting your weight. So I hope you've enjoyed the session. It's been interesting for me. I've learnt a lot today, and this is the beauty about fishing. Every time you go out, you learn something new. And it's evident to see that the carp aren't really interested in feeding. Yes, we've come to the prime time of the day to catch fish, but it's took a long time for them to come down, and so you can't ignore the other species that are going to add weight, add bulk to your final weight. So I hope you've enjoyed the session. I certainly have, and I hope you can put some of the information that I've given to you to use on your local commercial fishery. At this time of the year when the fish are really want to come down the edge and feed, be positive, be confident, and you'll have a fantastic day's fishing. So until next time, tight lines.